All right, so let's begin with the Northeast, because some will say there's an element of truth in Mr. President's position that some years ago Boko Haram had hoisted flags in some communities, and it was fire for fire. But right now, children are returning to school, hospitals are back. How would you say that this administration has fared in the past 7 years, particularly fighting terrorism in the northeastern region?
Yeah, I think that if you, like the president said, I don't think he missed words with it. They've done very well when it comes to the issue with Boko Haram. Even the toughest critics would admit, based on the data that we see, I have an office in Maiduguri.
Wow.
I frequent Maiduguri myself. I sleep better in Maiduguri than in Abuja, surprisingly. I need to stop saying that, but...
Why so?
Because the garrison town itself, Maiduguri, used to have 3 divs in the height of the military operations against Boko Haram. That has now been reduced to 2 divs, showing you that you don't need as much. Before now, our force posture as a country, we had over 40% of our forces hold up in the northeast, conducting different operations within the theater. As a matter of fact, even the Redeemed Church or Deeper Life, one of these major churches, had an open-air crusade in Maiduguri last year. So there's a lot of improvement on ground. Conditions have improved in Yobe, in Adamawa. We have field operatives in Ngala and Puka, in Mubi, and life is returning back to normalcy. There are still pockets of issues. Maybe we can attribute that to some other fortuitous incidents within Boko Haram, the fight between JAS and ISWAP, and the introduction of foreign hardened terrorist elements, the taking out of Shekarau, that infighting, one or the other, we helped in no small measure. Then the military also evolved their tactics. Remember when you had the forward operating bases, which in itself was a very good principle. But if you have forward operating bases and you don't have the logistics and the support, closer support, you just have that those formations as sitting ducks. And Boko Haram did a very good job on them.
What do you consider to be the most critical factor in achieving this success in the past 7.5 years? Because I think I heard you once saying that the military cannot resolve insurgency, so to speak.
Yes, 100%. Issue of insurgency we will still have in one form or the other. The international politics of it also is a consideration. Under the Jonathan administration, I don't know if you remember, there was this seeming unstated blockage of arms to Nigeria. You had the U.S. in particular making a little noise about the Leahy Law.
That's right.
And there was a lot of blockade. We paid for Super Tucanos, we didn't get them. We paid for J-17 fighters from China. Everybody was just playing with Nigeria, as it were. You pay for equipment, you don't get everything. Even the Super Tucanos that we got, we still have not gotten the full delivery of what we paid for. And the Super Tucano themselves was badly stripped down, so we don't have the full capability of what we should have been getting. So there's still some of this interplay. Then you remember the case of a jet loaded with cash.
Indeed.
That went to South Africa,
to get arms.
Yeah, some say they went to get arms, So it's an equipment thing. You had a lot of reports of badly put together equipment. Negotiations for equipment was very bad. What the MOD had to do was to institute a policy of government-to-government purchase of arms, or government to OEM, eliminating the middleman. The problem has not gone off completely because the politicians in MOD are different from the technicians and the technocrats within the military top brass. So some of those issues the government, I see, tried to resolve in trying to ensure that a lot of support got to the fighting forces. I would also say fortuitously again, the issues between JAS and ISWAP helped in no small measure, because once they took out Shekarau, it was now clear to the Kanuris, because it's not an Islamic thing. It was more or less like a local community issue. And over 70,000 of them have so far surrendered. Because at some point we assessed that they just determined that it's no longer a local game. because the Al-Bawani section went out and brought in hardened jihadis, foreigners. All the times there was that movement, we're seeing it. And the way and manner they took out Shekarau and, decided to want to enforce their own. So let's say that we were shaped in terms of our posture to have been able to exploit the situation presented to us. And again, because the military changed their tactics, they were better supplied with a better resolve. Of course, the president being a retired military person, they had enough incentive to take the fight. So we're now on the front foot, doing fighting patrols, clearance operations, better coordination between the Air Force, between the Air Force and the Nigerian Army.
Well, that's still to be strongly debated if the collaboration has improved over the years.
It has improved.
But there are thousands of Boko Haram members who have now laid down their arms under the rehabilitation program of the federal government. It's still being terribly debated, the moral behind it, of people who have brazenly killed innocent people, and then we are now empowering them to reintegrate them into the society. But was that a successful peace arm of this success that the Buhari administration is talking about?
Yeah, in some of these matters, you have to apply a carrot and a stick approach. It is said in military strategy that if you push your enemy too much to the wall, you leave them a golden gate. Because at the end of the day, every conflict will resolve in dialogue. Even the Russia-Ukraine crisis will someday resolve in a dialogue. Now, rehabilitation, reintegration is also a key part of post-conflict management. The UN is spending a lot of money now in the Northeast on rehabilitation, reintegration into society. I know that there are a number of NGOs who are now focused on reintegration and rehabilitation. There's significant funding from the EU going into that. So post-conflict, what do you do? We have a national security that says that human security is the way to go. Would you rather spend, say, 20 billion on reintegration, or you spend 250 billion continuing to prosecute a war? You see, there must be an end to some of this madness, because you have the war economy. You can't continue. The war economy is not a sustainable economy. People have to go back to their lives and livelihood. You must allow people access back to their farms,
do you
their
trust
homes and everything.
Do you trust the process? Do Nigerians believe in the concept? Because the acceptability of it is also a thing.
The question is, who are you speaking to and who are you listening to? I give you an example. The traffic management system in Borno State, for example, that's an effort of reintegration also. Even the civilian JTFs themselves also need to be rehabilitated, and they're reintegrated and given some means of livelihood. So if you speak to those ones who have been, you get the perspective from them. If you speak back to because communities, families were divided. There were people who had to kill their fathers and mothers to show allegiance to Boko Haram. There were people who were set aside from their community. I mean, the notice is there to say whether or not they accept it. And so far, yes, there's been some of those, it's like Rwanda. You have to have those frank and honest conversations. You have to heal and move forward. Look at Rwanda today. It's a good case of where people move forward. So you have to move forward.
Except that the president is taking too long. It's staying too long.
Well, I mentioned the case that has to do with security. I don't want to go into the politics of it.
Because there's also the regional healing of it.
Yes.
Because he belongs, I think, to the Tutsi army.
Yes.
And he stayed for over 2 decades. So when you talk about the healing process, it's actually more controversial than it
They
appears.
are much better today than where they were before, which would be my point. And we must take an incremental approach to some of these things. You don't have a magic wand. You referred to what I said previously. The then IG of police, the then Buratai said it would take us about 20 years to resolve some of these issues. And I do agree. You look at the Edo train incident, it's not an isolated incident or an act of coincidence. We don't believe in coincidence. Some of these things are systematic. The problems are quite entrenched. They're not going away anytime soon. So when people talk about an Islamization agenda, that's also very laughable. The Daily Trust put out a fertility statistics about 3,000 something people killed in the Northeast, about 2,000 something in the Northeast, 3,000 something in the Northwest, and about 3,000 also in the North Central. In the South, 600 and something, 700 and something, 600 and something. The people who are bearing the brunt of some of these insecurity by armed criminal groups, don't let us classify them as headers or anything. These are armed criminal groups. In the Northwest, you have a transnational network of armed criminal groups that are entrenched. There's a black market economy for destabilization forces. And I'll leave it at that so we don't talk about certain things on air. So there are a lot of moving parts to the issues that we see. People respond to the symptoms, but they don't understand what is happening.
Coming from.
In the Sahel region, there are open markets, like where you hawk wares, clothes and food and everything. Arms and ammunition are being hawked in the open. The question is, who is supplying that belt? From where are they getting the arms and the resources and the training? So there's a destabilization effort. So let's leave it at that. There are some of those issues.
There are some groups that have harshly criticized the president's position, like the Middle Belt Forum, saying that there are still pockets of violence heavily sponsored by the terrorist group Boko Haram. They made reference to attacks in Chibok on Christmas Eve and a lot of other issues, like that. But I'd like us to speak to how insecurity has evolved in the past 7.5 years. So in the Northwest now, we're looking at an active banditry and kidnapping process, which is moving gradually into the South. We had the first attack on a train station in Igweben just this Saturday. So there are some who are saying, is that Boko Haram? I mean, are we saying that we have drawn a parallel between the defeated Boko Haram and the guys we now call bandits? Of course, they have now been proscribed into terrorists as well.
Now, let me say something that, because Nigerians will have a funny way of forgetting things. The issue of armed banditry, cattle rustling, is not new to the Northwest. It has been there for over 20 years now and counting. Gun running, the madness there has been there. It's just that now we have social media, it's a bit more amplified. You can speak to retired commissioners of police in Kaduna, in Zamfara, in Katsina, over 20 years period. They will tell you the issues have been there. We've been addressing it and managing it, as it were. Because of our parochial approach to national security, everything gets regionalized, politicized, ethnicized, or downright, you just overlook, because we don't take security seriously in Nigeria. You look at the terror alert put out by the U.S. some months back. Yeah. It caused a whole lot of noise in the country because the language used by the U.S. is even soft compared to what the U.S. uses on its own state. The U.S. says that it is under a constant threat of a terrorist attack, and they rate themselves as medium to high risk environment. They use the same language on Nigeria. Everybody goes all bells and whistles, and we are pulling our hair off. You use that language to enforce preparedness. So our security culture is very poor. We build a 20 billion naira building. You think security lasts. Because in our national psychic, we don't think security is important. The Edo train attack, everybody is calling for the head of the commissioner of police for the railway service. And I laugh. Go to Ido here now. Look for the office of the railway police. Look at the shank they are in. For you to do security effectively, security is expensive. You need logistics. You need, if those guys are going to go on fighting patrol, I mean, you talked about the transition we had in the Northeast. How did we go about it? A battalion should have certain number of A vehicles, B vehicles, sometimes 40, or 40, 50, depending on what the operation is like. In some battalions, sometimes it's only the vehicles of the CO that is moving. So you put a CP railway police, the question is, how many vehicles does he have? What is the transport department like? What is the supply of logistics like? A policeman gets shot today in Nigeria, the commander would have to raise money for the medical bill of that person. A senior police officer gets someone to Abuja, he has to raise his flight ticket. And so we wake up and call, the police, the police, the police. How many police do you have? Some will argue that more than half are already protecting private individuals. So the police you have in the field are not enough. The police should work 8-hour shifts, do 3 shifts. But you have policemen working 24 hours, 48 hours. And then you see them drinking all these stuff to keep awake. Then you say a policeman is drunk on duty. The joke is on the people who are not supplying the police the right thing. Let me even make you laugh further. Your divisional police officer, confirm, the reports will suggest that they don't get more than 10,000 naira a month on fueling of their vehicles. And each division should have minimum 2 vehicles. But because of the way we're expanding, some of them have 4, 6 vehicles. And then they tell you bail is free. How do you get bail for free when stationaries are not even supplied? And so you say there's a railway police. You have to monitor the track. Go to the NRC, ask to see their control room. The NRC should show Nigerians. I challenge those in House of Reps and the Senate. Don't take my word for it. Go and see the NRC operations room. Let them show the Senate committee or the House of Reps committee the visibility they have of the locomotives. If an incident occurred, you should have pinpoint accuracy of where that incident has occurred and then send quick response to the place. So there are a lot of moving parts, and I do think that even the NRC...
Are you concerned that with the many attacks and the many security challenges we've had
Yes.
in recent years, that many of these issues you have raised have not been addressed, particularly at the National Assembly?
It is the problem we have in security management is what you call a wicked problem. A wicked problem has multi-actors, it's multi-layers, and you have to take a multi-pronged approach to resolving a wicked problem. So it's a wicked problem. It's a cultural issue, it's a disconnect issue, it's an ignorance issue, because the people who should know don't know.
Who has the responsibility to fix it?
My God, that's a tough question. We all have the responsibility. Security is collaborative, but let's even drill down. First, I do think that before you become sworn in as a reps or senator, you should go for a course on security. And we are at that point now. Before you become president, governor, or after you become, go for a course on security. Because a lot of these people are relying on what they are told. And in Nigeria, when proposals are made for security, a lot of it is colored by all sorts of interests. Imagine a government official saying that they want to lay CCTV. They want to lay CCTV on the rail track from Abuja to Kaduna. That's ludicrous. It's totally absurd. The railway system have signaling. There are signaling equipment you can use for some of those things. The way the standard gauge is built now, you can geoseismically sense when there's any footstep on any section of the rail line. Some of the signaling equipment that we bought are in containers till tomorrow. So it's a wicked problem. But for Nigeria, the presidency is responsible 100%. He cannot abdicate. He cannot wish that away. So if he says he's done well on the issue of Boko Haram, yes, he has done well. But there are failures everywhere in terms of the state of insecurity now. So what has happened is that because we put the heat on them in the northeast, they moved. So northeast, plenty attention. Southeast, south-south. South-south because of the oil and gas infrastructure. Southeast because of IPOB. So our first posture was northeast, southeast, south-south. Our underbelly was north-central, northwest, and southwest.
Let me hold you for a minute. George has called in from Ikeja. Good morning.
Good morning, Nifemi, and greetings to your guests. I would like to thank you, Nifemi, for bringing this type of guest. It's the first one I'm seeing speaking to facts of the situation, not someone who will come and disguise and will be speaking for a political party. If you listen to him carefully, he's telling you facts and details that cannot be contested. The other time we were discussing police restructuring. This is the kind of person I had in mind. Imagine if this person is asked to go and restructure the police. He already has the ideas. It doesn't need to be from the system. And only someone that can come from outside the system that knows how it can work and do it without encountering stiff opposition from those inside, his colleagues. So this insecurity thing, where you can now see, hearing from an expert, that it's not the way many people look at it. It's true that Boko Haram is not what it used to be, but insecurity has gone to another direction in some parts of the country. I see it as a very dynamic industry. I don't know what to call it. That crime industry. It has become an industry, and it's very dynamic. And the criminals appear to have an edge. They think faster than those who go after them. That is, before the military will have the way to tackle them now. They will go into another. So it is something that is that you need to tackle with dynamism as well. I just want to thank you for bringing this man. Let him speak further and let Nigerians listen to him. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. George. Mr. George is always scrutinizing our editorial judgment on the show. Thankfully, he's in love with you this morning.
Thank you very much, Mr. George.
But the narrative has been that, okay, there's heat in the Northeast, and then these guys have spread to other regions. Because even though you said that we've had 2 decades of all these challenges,
yes,
but it hasn't been this brazen and widely publicized. I mean, okay, so there was a time when the attacks were usually on the Abuja-Kaduna road. I mean, it's perhaps the first time we're seeing it on the railways in that fashion last year. Is there an active collaboration between the Boko Haram members and the guys we call bandits?
I think that we should not get carried away by nomenclature. We call them armed criminal groups. That's what they are, or armed organized groups. Organized groups can be groups that have an objective, they are armed, and, groups like ISWAP, Boko Haram, and the rest.
So they're not terrorists?
Well, the federal government has labeled them terrorists, so you can call them terrorists. But the point I make is that behind the criminality, it's all economics. Yes? Yes or yes?
Even for Boko Haram?
Yes. There's all money involved. Boko Haram started as ECOMOG. 1999 brought the Fourth Republic. With it, a certain level of armed political thuggery, which later morphed, because of lack of patronage and some other conditions, into Boko Haram, as you had issues in the South. Okay, so let's even stick with the issues now. I've told you, over 20 years, it's been there. Before the NDA was attacked, we kept warning, because there was the Nigerian army and the NDA has lived with some reports of these chemicals for long. And because they felt that, listen, they don't disturb us, we don't disturb them, and generally they were not interested until they were attacked. Before they started doing those clearance operations, there were people who were kidnapped. They said they were hearing the noise on the parade grounds because they were that close. I listened to, we talk sometimes with retired service person, and somebody said to me, one retired DSS officer, and I wouldn't mention his name. He said Nigeria security has been luck, just based on luck. You win some, you miss some. We say we have security. You see all the vehicles stationed in the daytime. You drive at night. Drive at night, you won't see nothing. Because these people have to sleep. They are doing day and night jobs. We don't have enough police to run the shifts.
Let me hold you for a moment to take Nelson's call. No, Benga. Benga called in from Abuja. Hi, Benga.
Good morning.
Good morning.
My name is Benga from Abuja. Good morning to your guest.
Good morning.
Femi, good morning.
Good morning, sir. Please go ahead.
Yes. Well, for me, I want to agree with President Buhari that he has been able to fulfill his promise on the issue of Boko Haram. Underlying issue of Boko Haram. Before he came in, Boko Haram were occupying 17 local governments in Yobe, Adamawa, and Borno. And that time, a lot of bombing in Abuja here, where I live here, and UN house was bombed. This day office was bombed. I mean, even headquarters of the police was bombed, and other places like Nyanyam also. I mean, in those days, even to enter my church, as a leader in the church, I have to be screened to enter my church. But that one is no more now. Now Boko Haram now have been degraded to saying that they are like armed robbers now. They strike and run away. And many of their commanders have been killed. And even the Chibok girl, who are their husbands, who are their wives, has to now come out because their husband have been killed. And many of them, in about 20 or 30, came out on their own because nobody to fend for them again. Shekau were eliminated, Abana were eliminated, and up to now, there's integration there. And that's due to the work of intelligence coupled with machinery, like the Tucano jet and the rest of it. So I want to say that on that, you have achieved something. Then people will raise the issue of kidnapping, banditry. Let me tell you, kidnapping is as a result, majorly, of the cashless policy. When we started cashless policy in 2012, people did not know the consequence of it, and the government did not prepare for it. If at that time we are putting security level to local by creating community policing and state policing, we will not be where we are today, because the armed robber could not stop luxurious bus on the road again at Orebini Road and make people to surrender their money, or armed robber going to people's house to carry money, because cashless policy now into people now not carrying cash. Because of that, it now took to kidnapping. In that there, you will take the money to go and meet them in their house, where they are, and they collect in billions. So when these bandits who now realize, look, there's money in kidnapping, they also took to it. Let me tell you, people who are called bandits today were cattle rustlers. And because they could not succeed in their business anymore in San Francisco, they took to kidnapping and making money and also attacking the government. And this is the phenomenon of what we are fighting with now in Niger, in Sokoto, in San Francisco. They were rustlers before, but now to bandits, now to kidnapping and making money. And the government deal with them. So by and large, what we are having at this phenomenon of kidnapping is a new thing, and I think the government can surmount it. But the solution is community policing and state policing.
All right, thank you so much for your contribution, Gbenga from Abuja.